Hello, it's been a while since I've done one of these. Randomly decided halfway through my warm-up sets to start filming in landscape, turn on the 4K, turn it down to 24 FPS just to make sure that I'm not using up too much space. I'm not a very good cameraman. I'm not entirely sure how the fuck everything works, but it's been working. I used to do it like that and it worked then, so I guess it's going to work now. But now, welcome back to the vlogging. I am 4 weeks out from competition, avia performance. So I'm really keen to do something like that. And what am I doing here? I'm 4 weeks out, and I'm doing a conventional deadlift. A conventional deadlift? What the hell? Yeah, guys, I'm switched to conventional. I think a lot of people who are watching it would understand know that I have switched to conventional deadlifting, but yeah, I'm committing to it. We swapped out, gosh, probably 3 blocks ago. We just committed after doing sumo's post competition in end of last year, 2024. I just noticed that my hip wasn't feeling good. I thought it was my lower back, and I did previously have a lower back injury about 12 months ago, probably close to 2 years ago now, actually. I slowly got back into it. I slowly got back into sumo deadlifting, and everything felt pretty good. I was able to, at the end of the year, get back to a 285, 290 deadlift during training, but in competition, I did miss out on it, not because of lower back issues, but we didn't really peak correctly. I don't think we really had a good idea of how to utilize a correct peak with my new sumo form. The change that I made with my sumo form was actually becoming a little bit more of an extended position. Originally, I would have a lot more flex position, and I would break the floor really easily, but then I wouldn't be able to lock out that well. So I decided when I finished 2023 USAPL Nationals that I'm going to change everything. I'm going to kind of break down my form and focus on creating a much more extended position, which will help my lockout. I knew that it would be much slower off the ground, and I was prepared to do something that would be slow off the ground and just stick with it. It was really hard to figure that out at the start because when I did it, sometimes it wouldn't break the ground, but it wasn't that I wasn't strong enough. It's that I just wasn't patient enough and I wanted to move fast. But as soon as I learned that, as soon as I learned to stick with it, I was able to learn a really cool deadlift technique for sumo deadlifts. And the trade-off was just much better than me having a much more rounded position. However, the disadvantage was that when I performed really well, the week after, everything just fell apart. Not that it fell apart, I just was able to perform really well for a short period of time. So like a week, I was able to perform really well. Then the week after, 270, 260, 250, couldn't even break the ground. It was really interesting, and we actually did not figure out how to work that into the peak. We didn't really figure it out for competition, and it kind of backfired. We were only able to do like a 260 and then miss like 285 twice. Hey, is what it is. I was able to get a 672.5 kilo total, and that was 2.5 kilos off my best total at 10 kilos lighter. So I performed a 672.5 at under 100 kilos. So that was cool. But then afterwards, sumo deadlifts just, I don't know why, was cooking my hip. We couldn't really figure it out. Randomly, I suggested to coach, hey, can we try conventionals just for a period of time? I was thinking in my head, even if things don't work out for conventionals, I could potentially just stick with them for a little bit rather than, keep pushing sumo deadlifts. And then randomly, they kind of popped off. I remember in the final straw for like sumo deadlifts was I did a conventional deadlift at the start of the week. I did 220 by 6, and it felt like an RPE 6 to 7. And I was like, well, that was interesting. That was really, really good. Then that same week, I did sumo deadlift, 220 by 6, and it felt like shite. I just didn't like it. I had plenty of rest after the conventional deadlift. Potentially, yeah, there could have been some fatigue there, but to be honest, it was my hip was cooked and everything I just didn't feel good, and it didn't feel like what my sumo deadlifts used to feel like. So I just decided, hey, let's just commit to it. We committed to it. We've got a competition 4 weeks out, and things are moving well. Last block, I was able to do a 270 kilo conventional deadlift, and I did say to myself at the start of my peaking block, at the start of like the first official block of conventional deadlifts, that if I was able to do a 270, which is 15 kilos off my best ever deadlift, I just decided, you know what, let's just stick with it. It's a good enough deadlift to get me a decent enough total and potentially total PB with a good squat and a good bench press, which bench press has been popping off. And I just thought, in the grand scheme of things, if it doesn't cook my hip and if I'm getting a total PB, why the fuck not? So yeah, that leads to now where I'm able to, we're finally increasing the volume of conventional deadlifts, where we were originally doing a top set with 2 drop sets of 5 reps. Now we've increased it to a 3 drop sets, decreased the reps to 4 reps, which I think was a smart decision. I do reckon that I will stick with the same weights all the way through, even though we've decreased the reps on our deadlifts. So I finished off with 220 by 5, and then I think it was like 210 by 5 for the last set. Even though we've decreased the reps again from 2 to 5, 2 by 5 to 3 by 4, I reckon I'll stick with the same weights, because I know that they're fatiguing enough to give me a good enough stimulus. But if I start trying to push it really hard, especially on the reps, I know I'm just going to get gassed out. And that is an interesting thing with my conventional deadlifts. And it was very obvious, and we kind of understood that this was the case. But we know that I can push my sumos, I'd get a top set of 280, 285, and I'm able to do a drop set by 6 at 260, which is 20, 25 kilos off. But my last block, when I finished my heaviest single of conventional deadlifts, it was 270. Then I did a drop set of 220. So that is a huge discrepancy compared to my drop sets from my sumos. So it's just interesting to see these things and see these differences. And it really plays into how we program the deadlifts now versus how we used to program the sumo deadlifts. So really big changes here. Even with squats, where doing doing conventional deadlift really brings in a lot of fatigue for my squats. So I really need to consider that. Bench press. Now, bench has been moving fantastic. I was able to increase my bench by a considerable amount. And I really think it's due to my prehab stuff, or my warm-up techniques that I've been able to apply. So we kind of noticed that around the external rotation muscles, around the rear delt muscles, and even the serratus anterior, that's where things have been playing up, leading into my pec issues. I think it's a little bit of a stability thing, where I noticed that my pec would flare up. I would feel my external rotators just almost like grip up, almost like they're really hot and tense. And I noticed that one time when my pec flared up, and I mentioned it to my EP and my physio, and they thought that, hey, I think it's because of that it's leading into your pec issues. So that's why my warm-up stuff has been really focusing on that. So I'll do some external rotations. I'll do some Y raises to help with the serratus anterior. I'll do some thoracic stretches to just get that flexibility up. And then I'll do some really low to high face pulls and get that, external rotators really warmed up. 2 sets of 70 kilos on the bench press. I'll just go straight to 70 kilos because I can kind of get into a stable position with some weight on. The bar, really, I just can't do anything with it. And really sticking with it. So this bench session is a primer for my primary session on Saturday, but I don't care if it's lighter. I am still working up to like 140. It is super light. I can really just get into it, and I'm sure I'll be fine. But taking that warm-up routine really seriously, I reckon has helped me immensely with my bench press. And I even thought that, hey, I've got my primary session tomorrow after this primer session. Why don't I warm up extra so tomorrow I feel nice and limber in that area? Because, I'll be training maybe 12 p.m. on the Friday, and I'll be training early morning on the Saturday. I reckon that there would be benefits of doing those warm-up stuff like quite intensely or proper, as if I'm doing like a proper primary session in my secondary sessions. So regardless, if it's Larsen press, if it's a primer bench press, if it's a secondary bench press, I don't care what it is. I'll be doing, that same exercises that you saw before, and I'll be doing it properly to make sure that I'm nice and warmed up. and even nice and primed for my next bench session that might be the next day, just to make sure that I'm not feeling my pec at all. Recently, the pec might pop up every once in a while, but not as bad and not as hindering as it used to be, which is really, really great. But last block, we kind of figured some things out. We've been doing 2 primary sessions in the week. I was pushing them, alongside each other, like pretty aggressively. So the Saturday session, I knew that it was better than the Tuesday session. So the Tuesday session, I'd probably be going like 5 kilos or 2.5 kilos less. But now we're really considering that maybe 5 to 7.5 kilos less in the same week is better. So after last block, when we did pull back on the last week, the first bench press, then we pushed the second bench press, and the second bench press just flew. I was able to get 170 really easily, really comfortably, really confidently, like under commands. And we saw that and we're like, hey, this is working. So we decided to really pull back on the first primary session. We're going to cap it load in range, and we're going to be really sensible with the selection we make there. And then leading into the Saturday session, we're going to push those because that seems to work. We figured out the primer sessions during the week, and we figured out that the first primary session does affect the second primary session, not enough for us to have to pull back like a lot, where we have to pull back almost like 10, 20 kilos. We can still do a very heavy set or a heavy set on the first day that's worth it, and then on the Saturday, that's when we push it. That's when we test things. That's when we figure out, hey, what can we do? But again, just doing the benches and just doing the rehab stuff or the prehab stuff and having all those primers together and really pushing back exercises as well, getting that back nice and strong, that's really helped with my pec stuff. So we're really starting to figure things out. With this competition, it's not that we're really trying to push things. Things have been a bit not 110%. Bench we figured out. Deadlifts we're just starting to figure out. Squats didn't really go well last block. We think we figured some things out, and we're really just trying to work with it. Because of how well squats moved last block or last preparation for comp, we are pretty confused on why squats haven't been going well. I did have quite a few holidays at the start of the year, so training did take a little bit of a hit, but is what it is. We just move on and we keep pushing forward, and that's our main goal for it. So we'll see the changes that we made. Changes being that we moved our squat session to a Sunday instead of a Saturday, and our deadlift session is staying on Friday. So then we have plenty of rest, which we did really consider that before, because when we did our preparation last time, we were doing sumo deadlifts on the Wednesday, squats on the Friday. So we had plenty of rest in between, like a day's rest. So we are considering that is the main thing that did affect our 250 at the end of last block. So we're hoping that change really makes a difference. But hey, we'll see. Could make no difference, could make every difference in the world. But I'm really keen to see if that difference is huge. We will really tell this week. Last week was my first week, which is the day you're seeing right now. We keep things relatively easy, a little bit of a pivot week, pushing into 3 really hard weeks. The pivot week always feels pretty arse. It doesn't feel the best. It always feels like I'm pretty iffy and stuff like that. But, that's a usual block, and that's usually how things go from there. But yeah, so things have been moving really well. I'm keen to see how this competition goes. Again, it's not going to be a crazy competition. It's not going to be a competition where I'm, increasing my total to 800 kilos. You never know. Peak or the taper could work, and we could get an 800 kilo total, which won't be the case, but one can dream. But the rest of my stuff is just my accessories, my single leg hamstring curls, which hamstrings have been getting quite stronger. It's really caught up with my deadlifts. It would be a main concern on my conventional deadlifts because sumo being such a dominant exercise that we really needed to focus on some hinge stuff, get that stronger, but I caught up really well. So it didn't really affect me too much coming into a conventional deadlift. But again, really hinge heavy accessories at the end of this with my single leg hamstring curls, and then the back extensions, which we did change to a bit of a rounded back extension, hugging a medicine ball, which has really helped because last time I did 270 on last block, I did feel a little bit in my rear delt or my external rotators, which never felt on deadlifts before. Again, conventionals is such a new thing, so potentially something new would pop up. But now we know, now we know. So we can add in some things, put in some, warm up stuff that can really help for the conventional deadlifts. And again, it's conventional deadlifts is so new for me. It's something that I've never really done before. Honestly, when I started powerlifting as a youngling at 18, we swapped to sumos really quickly. So we didn't really have time to kind of build into conventional deadlifts, which, it is a bit of an old head thing to say, where you really need to focus on every lift that you could possibly do. Make sure your high bars are strong, make sure your low bars are strong, make sure your front squats are strong, make sure your sumos are strong, make sure your conventionals are strong, regardless of what lift you do in competition. But I do think it is something that you should focus on, specifically conventionals, because it does have a bit of a trade-off. It does get your lower back and hamstring strong if that's something that's weak. If you did move to sumos really quickly when you started powerlifting, then maybe doing a bit of a block with conventionals is a good idea. But yeah, that's my session for week 1, day 5. Really good. Really keen to get back into some vlogging, and I'll be posting something potentially once a week. But hey, we never know. Anyways, see you guys.